Yeah. Yeah. Open up the book to chapter 5 of Galatians. Love, joy, peace, and you gotta have patience. Kindness, goodness, always be faithful. Gentleness and discipline is how to be graceful. Fruits of the spirit and the fruits so tasteful. So for the fruits I'll forever be grateful. Grateful. Slow, loud, and biblical, all in my trunk. Used to be a drunk, now I'm living like a monk. A little bit of leaven will leaven the whole lump. So I looked into the truth and it couldn't be debunked. And I don't know what you thunk, I don't know what you heard. Lies get told and the lines get blurred. They can talk all about this, that, and the third, but nothing did it for me like getting in it to work. Cause we were called to a freedom, my brother. Make it an opportunity to serve one another through the spirit. By faith we await the great hope, so we keep the fruits of the spirit by the plate load. Open up the book to chapter 5 of Galatians. Love, joy, peace, and you gotta have patience. Kindness, goodness, always be faithful. Gentleness and discipline is how to be graceful. Fruits of the spirit and the fruits so tasteful. So for the fruits I'll forever be grateful. Grateful. The lusts of the flesh are evident, not heaven sent. Everything vile, improper, and malevolent. Adultery, fornication, living unclean, lewd acts and idolatry. That is obscene, witchcraft and the sorcery. Hatred and contention, jealousy, wrath, and a selfish ambition and sedition. Heresy, division, envious and murderous. That is not the mission. Drunkenness and revelry. And I meant to mention, if you practice that, then you will not receive redemption. Open up the book to chapter 5 of Galatians. Love, joy, peace, and you gotta have patience. Kindness, goodness, always be faithful. Gentleness and discipline is how to be graceful. Fruits of the spirit and the fruits so tasteful. So for the fruits I'll forever be grateful. Grateful. Open up the book to chapter 5 of Galatians. Love, joy, peace, and you gotta have patience. Kindness, goodness, always be faithful. Gentleness and discipline is how to be graceful. Fruits of the spirit and the fruits so tasteful. So for the fruits I'll forever be grateful. Grateful.
Hello and welcome to Kingdom in Context. I want to thank you for joining us here today. It says our mic is muted, but shouldn't be. Welcome, guys. Welcome everyone in the live chat. This is a Sabbath fellowship. Shabbat Shalom, sweetie.
Shabbat Shalom, babe.
Thanks for doing this with me.
Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you, everyone who's here, who's participating in the live chat. Hope you're having a good Sabbath day of rest. And we wanted to shout out a couple of opportunities for us to give alms as a body. We have two different options in the video description below. So Randy Smith of Lifting the Veil channel, his father actually passed. And so the family is needing some help with burial provisions. So that GoFundMe is in the video description below. And we also have the lady, was it Rebecca Rabadan? Elizabeth Rabadan, who and her family, she's a believer, her and her family are desperately trying to get out of a bad situation where they live, and so they're needing relocation funds. So if you please, if it's on your heart and you have the availability to give, those are two great options that you could give to. It's just one of the easy ways that we can keep the commandments of God by giving alms. Bless you. So consider that's in the video description below. And I think, is there any other announcements you want to talk about today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Other than you wanting to correct something.
Yeah. We're going to pick up in 2 Samuel where we left off last time in 2 Samuel chapter 15. We're going to pick up in 16 through 20 with this episode. But before we do that, I wanted to actually go to all right, there we go. Trying to get this to work. All right, so last week, a few of you brought us to our attention, so we wanted to thank you for help. We overlooked a piece of the passage last time where it said the child born out of wedlock or born from adultery with David and Bathsheba, that the Lord had struck the child so that it would be sick. And we thought it was a natural illness. We overlooked where it says in verse 15, the Lord struck the child. And so I saw a couple of you guys mention this in the comments, and I was like, all right, well, let me go look at it. I must have missed something. And so as I went back and I looked at it, I started doing some digging, and wow, this is interesting. Okay. Now, the original question from last week was, why did the child have to die if it was David's sin, right? And so people pull up Deuteronomy, I think it's 24, where they're talking about that the son won't be judged for the father's sin. Now, ultimately, on a large scale, I hope everyone, okay, on a large scale, the son that died is not going to be sent to the lake of fire. Okay, this is my understanding, that the son, it's not because of the son's sin specifically that he's going to be judged for his eternal state. So we're not talking about the eternal death. So then when we go into the judicial aspect of Deuteronomy 24, where it's talking about like with the judges involved, if a person commits a sin worthy unto death, well, is the child supposed to be punished for that? No, they're not. This, unfortunately, though, is a unique situation, and I'm going to be fully transparent with you guys. People can take issue with this, with what we're about to read from these, from the Septuagint and from the Catholic Latin translation, because it requires just as much understanding of God's ways and apologetics as realizing he's not contradicting himself by judging the sin of David resulting in someone else's death. This is not there's three aspects of this that we need to clear up, okay? The first aspect is the eternal state of judgment, and that's what we want to clear up right out the gate. We do not believe that the son is being damned in any kind of way to eternal destruction based off David's sin. Just because your life is cut short doesn't mean that you're being judged unto eternal destruction, okay? The Father's the one who judges us for our every thought and deed. So, and it doesn't tell us how old the child was anyway, but that's not the point. We're not putting forward or agreeing with any accusation that the father would be damning the child to eternal destruction. So one of the three categories we feel is put to rest, okay? As it goes to judicial judgment, when you shall not judge a child for the sins of the parents, we tried to bring this up from Ezekiel chapter 18 last week in regards to the bad proverb that was being passed around Israel while the nation was in a state of rebellion against God's commandments. And they had unrighteous priests, rulers, and judges, to where then they would say, oh, the children eat the grapes, but the thief's children are set on edge, meaning the children are receiving consequences for the decisions of the parents. Yahweh's trying to encourage Israel, or at least faithful Israel, that there will be a point in the future where that proverb will not apply, because even the parents will be doing what's right and not giving their children bad consequences. Similar to like in the United States, we have a political class that has been putting their children and grandchildren in massive debt, if you will, and in a crazy improper trade balance, which is causing the value of our monetary system to be devalued and mass inflation to happen. And so there's a lot of problems. So the older people are making decisions that are only good for them momentarily, but then down the line, you have other people's teeth set on edge because now they're angry about the status that they find themselves in which they have no control over. So in a judicial sense, the judges are not judging David's child to be put to death based on David's sin. Now, we did talk about this, how it seems as if a lot of people knew about David's sin. And I'm guessing the word of the Lord came to Nathan in a supernatural way, like it does in other places, but it may not even had to, because it seems like everybody knew about the state of his sin. And that leads us to the third classification of this passage. Okay, guys, I hope you're paying attention. So if we look at this actual passage here, let me see if I can actually make it slightly larger. 1 second. Okay. So if we look at the classification here, what it says, nevertheless, this is what Nathan is saying. The Lord has taken away your sins. Speaking of David, you will not die. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have shown utter contempt for the word of the Lord, the son born to you will surely die. So Nathan is giving the motivational reason why the son will have to die, because David showed contempt for the word of the Lord. But that's what it says in the Masoretic. Let's look at other translations, because I was baffled, absolutely baffled on how this does not come across in the Masoretic. So if we go to another translation, the Septuagint translation, we're going to read a few. It says, only because you have given great occasion of provocation to the enemies of the Lord by this thing, your son also that is born to you shall die. Thoughts, sweetie? No? Okay. Sorry.
Put me on the spot right away. I thought you were getting to the point first.
Sorry. We had already talked in depth about this previously. I thought you might want to chime in.
I thought you were wanting to get to the point of it.
Because
I would just get to the point. I mean, that's what my thoughts would be.
I am getting to the point. I literally have it on screen. This is the point. I'm saying here, since we already talked about this previously, would you like to? I'm giving you an opportunity to contribute at this point. Would you like to chime in at this point so that you can talk about this verse? Since we talked about the massive implications of what this could mean.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, it's a big deal for the king of Israel, a country that claims to follow and be in covenant with Yahweh and keep his commandments, for a king of Israel to procreate a child in this fashion, not just in adultery, but also then murdering the I want to say the child's father, but the woman's husband.
The woman's husband, yeah.
Yeah. That is a huge sin within Israel. And the fact that so many people would have known about it, Yahweh's enemies, all the enemies surrounding Israel, absolutely would have looked at that and treated it the way atheists treat, when there's abuse scandals in the church, for example. The atheists like to say, oh, you believe in God, look at what your God's people do. And so that's the same heart. That's the same opportunity that is being given to the enemies of Yahweh by what David has done. So it is more than just that he committed adultery and murder. Yep. It's that by those actions and how out in the open those actions clearly were, there was another sin that was being committed here that was bigger than just what we see on the surface.
Yeah. In addition to the adultery, in addition to the murder, there's also people knew about this. Yeah. And this is a big deal. If we look at even the JPS Tanakh, this deed, you have greatly blasphemed the enemies of the Lord. Well, that's interesting. What does this possibly mean? Because there will be boasting to the enemies of the Lord Jehovah in this deed.
Yeah.
So the Peshitta Bible from the Aramaic translation, because there will be boasting to the enemies of the Lord, meaning everyone knew about this.
Yeah.
Everyone. Again, like we talked about last week, it's probably abnormal when they see Uriah being put to the front lines.
Yes.
Even the enemy might have thought, if they, again, because we talk about Uriah being grafted in, he's called a Hittite. We don't know his backstory entirely. And a lot of people are saying, well, he's one of the mighty men that's referenced as David's mighty man, but there could have been more than one Uriah. I'd have to look up the lineage and see if it's actually him. I don't remember ever making that connection on my own, and possibly I could have overlooked it. But if it was one of his mighty men, then it's very possible that the enemies of the Lord had already knew who this guy was.
Yeah.
Right. And so to see him being put in a precarious position, that was abnormal for military tactics.
Yeah, we know based on Joab's reaction that's not, wait, you want me to do what with him?
Yeah.
So clearly he was not in whatever job he had in the army was not that job. Now someone in the comments actually said what I was saying earlier that we were talking about. Let me see if I can scroll down or scroll up here. This one.
What'd you find, sweetie?
It may sound wrong, but it's better for the child to go to Sheol than be raised and be the product of the king of such a wicked deed. And that
I was going to get to that after we fleshed out the idea of the disgrace to
you asked for my
Yahweh. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's kind of like I apologize. I was trying to focus on the disgrace to Yahweh real quick.
Okay.
That definitely is a tangent point for sure. We'll get to the bastard situation and how the law looks at that and how people treat it. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the point is, I want to put on screen here the different passages and how other people translate it from the Aramaic and the Peshitta, that this concept of, wait a minute, it's more than just, because you did this thing against the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
Right. The Masoretic is very nondescript.
Yeah.
Like this is a very specific charge that because of this deed, you're going to make the enemies of Yahweh boast.
Yeah.
Like that is wild because what? You have destroyed one of the mighty men of Israel who's been destroying us. You were unfaithful to him and betrayed him and killed him. Yay for us.
Yeah.
And you're dishonoring your own God and his own laws. You're spitting in the face of your own God, showing that you're not being worthy to walk in the commandments of your own God. Then they look at David, who's the emissary and the anointed of the Lord, as he doesn't serve his God.
Yeah.
And he just took out one of the soldiers that's been taking out us. Yes. Like there's a ton of reason for the enemy to boast in this story.
Yeah. someone else in the comments said that justice had to be done in this situation because everyone was watching. And it wasn't just everyone in Israel. It wasn't just the people of Israel who knew about this. This got back to the enemies of the Lord. This was something that was done openly.
Yeah.
I mean, the deed itself may not have been done openly, but everything leading up to and following the deed was all clearly done openly.
Yep.
So, yes, that is an aspect that I did not consider with the shame that is brought upon Yahweh's name itself.
Yep.
When you do something like that.
So therefore, does it make sense now of what's going to happen to David as a result of this? Absalom is going to take his wives in broad daylight and shame David to all the people.
Yeah.
David's going to be shamed to all the people, just as Yahweh was shamed to all the people. Now, again, I can't stress this enough for all the people out there who are thinking, well, why did the child have to die? The child didn't do anything wrong. It's not about that. The child, I believe even David knew the child was going to be okay. Just as David said, I will meet him. I will go to him, but he will not come to me. Meaning when David dies, he goes to the good side of Sheol where the child is to see him again. Yeah. He doesn't assume the child is in the bad side of Sheol.
Yeah.
Okay. So even David understands that the child is in the hands of the Lord. He's okay. Overall, he will take part in the resurrection. It's fine. But yes, his life was snuffed out early, because of the ramifications publicly, internationally, and even within the house. Like, because he's technically not, all right. So this would go into the defining lines, which I don't think the Bible defines explicitly, but the defining lines of what's considered the bastard child, right? It's technically someone that's born out of wedlock. And technically that is, you could definitely call David and Bathsheba's arrangement their, what do they call it? Their entanglement. You call their little entanglement. You could definitely call that having a child out of wedlock, right? But yet they marry when the child's born, but that's not when the child was conceived, right? This is why it's called an egregious sin. So therefore, it's interesting here that because of that, would that child have been neglected to actually show up at the temple? Because the temple wasn't allowed. The temple wasn't able to receive the bastard children for like how many generations or whatever. It just makes you wonder if there would have been other, in addition to the social scorn of here comes a child walking around. I mean, he already is having problems with his real children from legitimate marriages, hating each other and plotting to kill each other in his own household.
Yeah.
And here comes this other child born out of wedlock, born from murder and adultery, born from disgrace. And it would, I'm not saying, I guess what I'm trying to say is the father had a variety of reasons to take the type of judgment that he did, resulting in the child dying, as opposed to letting the child live and there just being continued more strife in the house and problems in the house. Now, this is not an argument for abortions, guys.
Yeah.
The child was already born. The point is,
and human beings didn't take it upon themselves to end that child's life.
This is what's called divine justice, because there's other things at play here. And the bigger one being that the child definitely could not have taken the throne, but he would have been in line for the throne. So now we get into the promises to David about his the father making a covenant with David with his child, which we see the next son born to Bathsheba actually does take the throne. Why not all the other sons that David had, by the way? Absalom dies. The other guy, what was the other guy's name that took Tamar, that raped Tamar?
Amnon.
Amnon. But what about the other brothers? None of them are chosen for the line. So there was something else going on here where the father knew this cannot be, this next boy, he cannot be here. He's not going to be covered in the covenant for the kingship. Not that he's not covered in the covenant of all mankind, which is to receive eternal life from the Father, if he deems so. But specifically the covenant to David's lineage for kingship, he can't be covered in that. And he can't be included in the lineage of the Messiah.
Right.
So there is a bigger issue. There's lots of bigger issues here. And the very, very tough decision that the father made was that the child is going to have an early passing. And it's a rough reality, but that's the way it went. And this is why there's a lot more to it. So thank you guys for.
He's still there.
Is he still there?
But that's why we're down here, because we'll just set him up in his playpen and he should be okay. He's all right.
Okay. He's still asleep for now. All right. Thank you guys for letting us go through that. We're going to get over to chapter 16. And everyone, thank you. Thank you for bringing our attention that we overlooked something. I really appreciate you guys calling that out. And because we make mistakes, we overlook stuff. And this is why we're reading 1st and 2nd Samuel, because we have not spent a lot of time in these books.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of meat in here that needs to be considered. I don't know a lot of Torah groups that spend time in the middle books of the Bible, and I think there's a lot of stuff they miss, which is why you have the entire theory of the bride theory that is refuted when you spend time in the middle of the book, in the middle of the Bible, and you realize, well, wait a minute, there's that's why we did our identity crisis averted video, because I go systematically break down why this popular theory within the Torah community about the bride and all that, and the southern house never being rejected, which is false, and all that kind of stuff is just like, we had to spend some time in the middle of the Bible, and it cleared up some confusion. And that's why we felt like it might be advantageous to everyone listening that help spend some time with us in these middle books in the Bible to get to know them a lot better.
It's also why when you interviewed a Jewish rabbi, he had no interest in discussing any of the prophets with you, because his hyper focus is on the Torah. I made a post last week encouraging people to remember that the word Torah means instruction. It doesn't specifically mean those first 5 books and that's it. That's the Torah. So with that in mind, if you were to do your Torah portions throughout the year and have it be rotating, cycling through the whole book of instruction rather than just the first 5, your understanding of things is going to grow naturally. So yeah, that's a big problem in Judaism, is they're just so focused on reading through the 5 books, the Torah, year after year after year. They're never in these books. So yeah. Anyways.
Yep. Okay. David and Ziba, chapter 16. When David had gone a little beyond the summit, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, was there to meet him. He had a pair of saddled donkeys loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. Why do you have these? Asked the king. Ziba replied, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride. The bread and summer fruit are for the young men to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the wilderness. Where's your master's grandson? Asked the king. And Ziba answered, indeed, he is staying in Jerusalem, for he has said, today, the house of Israel will restore to me the kingdom of my grandfather. Wait, what?
Huh?
So the king said to Ziba, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours. I humbly bow before you, said Ziba. May I find favor in your eyes, my lord king. Okay. So reminder from last week, David has been considered cursed. Absalom, when David left, Absalom got all the men in the country to rally to his side. And David felt like he needed to evacuate his house with a bunch of his wives. He left a few behind in his palace. Absalom goes and is taken over the palace in Jerusalem. And David is like being temporarily exiled, and he's leaving Jerusalem. And he runs into Ziba, like you said at the top here, when he had gone a little beyond the summit. He runs into the servant of Mephibosheth. Now, it seems as if Mephibosheth is under the impression that Absalom is going to restore something to Mephibosheth's household.
Yeah.
Remember, the point of what Absalom was doing all that time was telling people what they wanted to hear.
Yes.
Remember that? That's how he rallied all the people to him.
Yeah.
Oh, but if I was made a judge, this injustice would not take place in Israel, right? So we're kind of getting some insight into potentially one of the lies told even to Mephibosheth, who's being shown the kindness from David, right? And so this is how he's rallying everybody against David. And David, of course, is going to, it's interesting on David's response. So just stay with us, Father. Stay with us, everybody, while we watch how the Father speaks to David, or has spoken to David in regards to what he should expect. And David just agrees with it for a time. So Shimei curses David. So as King David approached Bahurim, did I finish this? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But basically he said, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours. I humbly bow before you, said Ziba. May I find favor in your eyes, my lord the king. All right. So weird interaction with this servant of Mephibosheth. He then says, okay, well, now you get all this that belonged to Mephibosheth, and Ziba is extremely happy. The next guy's not happy. So as King David approached Bahurim, a man from the family of the house of Saul was just coming out. His name was Shimei, son of Gera, and as he approached, he kept yelling out curses. He threw stones at David and all the servants of the king, though the troops and all the mighty men were on David's right and left. And as he yelled curses, Shimei said, get out, you worthless man of bloodshed. The Lord has paid you back for all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. See, you have come to ruin because you're a man of bloodshed. It's weird because this guy's claim is almost as if he's saying, the Lord has paid you back for all the blood of the house of Saul in whose place you have reigned. As if he's attributing Saul's rebellion onto David now.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, right? But again, they don't have internet. They don't have, Fox News and CNN. There's not a consistent message going out to everybody on what's happening here with the change of power. I don't think they had newspapers going out to everybody, giving the official breakdown of what's happening. So people are going to have all kinds of ideas. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head. But the king replied, what have I to do with you, O son of Zeruiah? If he curses me because the Lord told him, curse David, who can ask, why did you do this? Did you get that?
No.
Okay. So one of his servants wants to go take care of the guy who's throwing stones and cursing him. And David's like, we can't do that because the Lord told him I'm cursed.
Oh, did the Lord tell the guy he's cursed?
David said to Abishai and to all of his servants, behold, my own son, my own flesh and blood seeks my life. How much more then this Benjaminite? Let him alone and let him curse me, for the Lord has told him so. Perhaps the Lord will see my affliction and repay me with good for the cursing I received today. This is the cursing that Nathan announced, that Absalom would rise up against him and take his wives, which is a form of saying like he took his house, his palace, his possessions. Yeah. He's taking his place as king. So this is where David is like, this is what the prophet told me, that I would go through this. So the people are right to think this about me. So this is David in the reason why I'm kind of drawing this out is because it's just wild, guys. David is like 100 or nothing. Like this guy he is the most humble, just looking for the heart of the Father, or he's a murderous, ravaging, adulterous killer. Like the dude is like,
I mean, because he was chopping heads off for disrespect a few chapters ago for disrespect. So
yes, well, that was when he had the favor of God, and he was the anointed favorite of God. He had not been rebuked by the prophet of the Lord, had not told him that this would happen. So now he's enduring what the Father said would happen to him, and he's like, yeah, this guy's right to think this about me and treat me like this because I am deserving of this at this moment.
So the Bible does back up the phrase respect is earned, not given.
Yes. And I think this is a passage that should be brought up more often when David is being spoken about, because it's one of those where we see him, the hyperbolic stories of him slaying the giant, right? Sometimes in church crowds, they'll even talk about his zeal and passion for dancing before the ark and how Michael's bad reaction to that and how he was justified in showing his praise and his passion for the Father, even though it inconsequently his garment fell off and he became naked while he was dancing. Not that he intended to, right? But just because he loved God so much, right? And we see all the Psalms written by David, and people are like, man, this is a man after God's own heart, right? And then you say, oh, but he had some pretty big mistakes in his life. And then like, yeah, he murdered a dude. He had a child out of wedlock, took to some guy's wife, and had to be rebuked by God. But once he was rebuked by God, look what he's doing. Like he has taken it wholeheartedly. Like, I deserve this. I deserve this. Everything coming to me, I deserve right now. So to me, he's not being forced into repentance. This seems like a man that is repentant.
Yeah, he's not one of those believers who's mistaking God's judgment for a spiritual attack from the enemy. A lot of people think that anything bad happening in their life is a spiritual attack when maybe it's the consequences of your sin. But yeah, he's definitely not one of those people. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I guess, I hope to communicate everyone watching. He had some incredible good moments. He had some bad moments, but it's like his good moments are just like, wow, that is noteworthy, right? Like that is humility. That is repentance. That is a man truly who's given his heart and his life to God. But then there's other moments where he's like, that's a man who's rebelled from God. What's he doing? And he's like up in the ante in his rebellion. He's adding sin to sin, right? Yeah. So like, what's he doing? I think this is an incredible representation of us all. I just really do. I think that we can all be extreme sinners, and we can be extremely repentant and humble and allow God to move through our lives. I can say, yes, I'm like that. not just because my middle name's David, but I've had extreme moments of rebellion in my life, and I've had extreme moments of God moving through my life because I had the right heart and I was truly, genuinely giving myself to him to be used. And so I just think it's, 2 Samuel 16, I think, should be studied by people more often, because this is very humble of David to be like, yeah, let him throw rocks at me and curses. Don't kill that man. He's justified in doing so. Like, that's wild. So David and his men proceeded along the road as Shemaiah went along the ridge of the hill opposite him. As Shemaiah went, he yelled curses, threw stones, and flung dust at David. Finally, the king and all the people with him arrived exhausted, and there he refreshed himself. Then Absalom and all the men of Israel came to Jerusalem. I don't know what that means, all the men of Israel, because that would be a large crowd.
Yeah.
So
probably like the judges of
I'm
Israel.
guessing the elders,
like the elders,
judges.
the leaders of Israel.
And Ahithophel, am I saying that right? Ahithophel was with him, and David's friend Hushai, the Archite, went to Absalom and said to him, "Long live the king! Long live the king! Is this the loyalty you show your friend?" You know what? I wonder in those charts, those chart breakdowns you see people do of like the prophets of Israel and the kings of Israel, is Absalom included in there? I don't remember seeing him in those charts.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, he's definitely not anointed by the Father, but like he clearly took over out of unrighteousness, and I'm pretty sure other kings took over out of unrighteousness throughout the book of 1st and 2nd Kings, where it chronologically records the kings. Why'd you not go with your friend? Absalom replied. Not at all, Hushai answered, for the chosen one by the Lord, by this people, and by all the men of Israel, his I will be, and with him I will remain. So this guy believes that Absalom's the chosen one. Furthermore, whom should I serve if not his son? Oh, so he's not saying. So wait,
what? Let's read the finish the passage.
Furthermore, whom shall I serve if not his son? So he's not talking about Absalom. He's talking about David.
No, he's saying he's going to serve Absalom. Whom should I serve if not his son? Absalom is his son. Who should I serve if not you?
Listen, though, sweetie. It says, not at all. Hushai answered, for the one chosen by the Lord, by this people, by all the men of Israel, his will I be, and with him will I remain.
Yeah.
Furthermore, whom should I serve if not his son? As I served in your father's presence, so I will serve in yours.
In yours, talking to Absalom.
Okay. So then Absalom said to Ahithophel, give me counsel. What should we do? Ahithophel replied, sleep with your father's concubines, whom he has left to take care of the palace. When all Israel hears that you have become a stench to your father, then the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened. Ugh. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and he slept with the father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now in those days, the advice of Ahithophel was like the consultation of the word of God. Such was the regard that both David and Absalom had for Ahithophel's advice.
What?
So
Absalom and David regarded this guy's advice?
Well, David's not there to regard it, but I think this guy counseled David before this happened, before this moment in David's life happened. And so therefore Absalom thought this was good advice because I guess his father had trusted this guy as an advisor. Why is Ahithophel giving that advice? Let's continue to find out. Chapter 17. Hushai counters Ahithophel's advice. Furthermore, verse 1, furthermore, Ahithophel said to Absalom, let me choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of David. I will attack him while he's weak and weary. I will throw him into a panic. All the people with him will flee. I will strike down only the king and bring all the people back to you as a bride, returning to her husband. You seek the life of only one man, and then all the people will be at peace.
So, hey guys, see, that's an example of a bride being used figuratively and metaphorically to describe an action that's taking place. These people aren't actually a bride being brought to Absalom. This is a figure of speech.
And Carl is correct. It is terrible advice. And it makes me wonder if the father, speaking through Nathan previously, knew Ahithophel would bring forward this type of advice to Absalom, which is why he prophesied, because if you did this, a man will take your wives in front of all the sight of the people. So that's just weird. That's a weird show of dominance to me.
Honestly, it's not. I mean, it's not with when you understand what's really behind the R word and the power. It's about power. It's not really about sex. So to me, actually, it makes sense from that warped, disgusting, sociopathic standpoint.
I just simply meant that in those days, usually you kill the predecessor.
Yeah, I hear. I thought you were talking about him sleeping with his wives.
Yeah, I'm saying you would do that after you killed the predecessor. Normally, the show of power and strength was that you overcome the previous king through warfare, and you had his head on a pike, or you openly, killed him in front of the people to show that you've taken over. And in this setting, where they have prophets and things like that, it would be like perhaps a sign from God validated the new king, but nobody's thinking like that. They're just thinking like, oh, Absalom's in the palace now, and he's in front of everybody taking on David's wives. We all love Absalom. We're claiming he's king. All the men shouted at once together, not because the angel of the Lord told them to do that, not because the prophet told them to do it, just because they all decided on their own, we're going to make Absalom king because we like him now.
Yeah.
And so they're all acting in rebellion already.
It's a coup.
It is, yeah. So it's just a weird way to do most coups are murdering the previous ruler, but they haven't gotten to that part yet. They're trying, but that's not their first priority. And I think that's weird. It should be their first priority, but it's not. And so it's more of this public media campaign of, we're going to do this illicit act in front of everybody, instead of just taking off David's head. So we'll start here in verse 4. This proposal seemed good to Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, summon Hushai the Archite as well, and let us hear what he has to say. So Hushai came to Absalom, who told him, Ahithophel has spoken this proposal. Should we carry it out? And if not, what do you say? Hushai replied, this time the advice of Ahithophel is not sound. He continued, you know your father and his men. They're mighty men, and as fierce as a wild bear robbed of her cubs. Moreover, your father is a man of war who will not spend the night with the troops. Surely by now he is hiding in a cave or some other location. If some of your troops fall first, whoever hears of it will say, there's been a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom. Then even the most valiant soldier with the heart of a lion will melt with fear, because all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man who has valiant men with him. So David is, they haven't forgotten that David is not to be trifled with militarily.
Yeah.
Instead, I advise that all Israel from Dan to Beersheba, a multitude like the sand on the seashore, be gathered to you, and that you yourself lead them into battle. Then we will attack David wherever we find him, and we will descend on him like dew on the ground. And of all the men with him, not even one will remain. If he retreats to a city, all Israel will bring ropes to that city, and we will drag it down to the valley until not even a pebble can be found there. Then Absalom and all the men of Hushai said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that of Ahithophel, for the Lord has purposed to thwart the good counsel of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom. But he's still going to take the wives. So Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, this is what Ahithophel has advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and this is what I've advised. Now send quickly and tell David, do not spend the night at the fords of the wilderness, but be sure to cross over. Otherwise the king and all the people with him will be swallowed up. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz were staying at Enrogel, where a servant girl would come and pass along information to them. They in turn would go and inform King David, for they dared not to be seen entering the city. But a young man did not see them and told them. But a young man did see them and told Absalom. So the two left quickly and came to the house of a man in Bahurim. He had a well in his courtyard, and they climbed down into the well. Then the man's wife took a covering, spread it over the mouth of the well, and scattered grain over it so nobody would know a thing. Man, this is a movie. This is wild. When Absalom's servants came to the woman at that house, they asked, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? They've crossed over the brook, she replied. The men searched but did not find them, so they returned to Jerusalem. After the men had gone, Ahimaaz and Jonathan climbed up out of the well and went in to inform King David, saying, get up and cross over the river at once, for Ahithophel has given this advice against you. So David and all the people with him got up and crossed the Jordan. By daybreak, there was no one left who had not crossed the Jordan. When Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out for his house in his hometown. He put his affairs in order and hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb. That is taking it hard. I'm guessing it was maybe perhaps a common understanding back then. If you're an advisor to the king and he doesn't take your advice, then he just assumed Absalom would think what Absalom stated. Absalom was like, the Lord has thwarted Ahithophel's advice against us. And so what does that mean? Does that mean like that's what Absalom declared because he liked Hushai's advice better, right? So we just immediately thought, well, the Lord has thwarted the other guy's advisor's advice against us. And now because his advice didn't get taken, he goes home and hangs himself. I'm just trying to like put my mind back in that day and be like, I get it that you might be kind of embarrassed they didn't take your advice, but that's why they had multiple advisors.
Well, he also, it seems like he just like completely turn on David. He said, I've served your father, now I'll serve you. So he's also in a bad position. He can't run over to David. He betrayed David, the king, the man of war, to advise Absalom to do these things.
Just because Absalom didn't take his advice doesn't mean Absalom's trying to kill him immediately.
Yeah, but he can't go back to King David's camp now. He took Absalom's side, and then Absalom thinks that the Lord thwarted his advice or whatever. Like, he's not. I would see that he probably might have a target on his back after that. As a man of betrayal. Well, who as a man who's not to be trusted.
That's what I'm getting. It's not spoken. And we've said this multiple times reading these books, these first 2 Samuel. There seems to be a lot of details that are kind of like quickly given, but not elaborated on. So that's what I'm assuming, is that I guess in that particular scenario, if you're like the main advisor and they don't take your advice, then somehow they view you as expendable in some way at that point.
I don't know.
But
I mean, this is
1 second. The advice that Hushai gave is the same advice that Ahithophel gave, yet just with more men. Ahithophel said take 12,000. Hushai was like, no, gather all Israel, because your father's an incredible man of war. Like, gather all Israel, right? So it's not like Hushai gave completely opposite advice. Ahithophel. He gave like similar advice, just it wasn't strong enough. He didn't encourage him to take enough men.
There was rejection involved either way.
I get that.
And he could not. So he clearly was rejected from the Absalom crowd. They did not like his advice. They think the God was working against his advice, so they wouldn't want to keep him around.
Do you think it was just out of shame he killed himself?
Yes. He completely backstabbed David. He completely betrayed David.
I don't know if that's the shame I'm talking about. I mean, like the shame of not being worthy or not being feeling worth anything to this new administration.
I think it's the shame of all of it. It's that not only did he was he shamed somehow with this new administration, quote unquote, but he backstabbed King David to become part of that crowd of people that then he was rejected from. So yes, I can see that being a collective shame.
Get it. I get it. I agree with you. I get it. I'm just going through for the sake of everyone listening, I'm going through all the options. Okay. Why couldn't he just go home and live out the rest of his life and not serve any of the new administrations and just chill?
Probably for similar reasons that if David's son had been allowed to live, he would have lived with a social stigma and shame that would have been projected onto him for his whole life. So
he's a failed advisor. So therefore you're forced into retirement, and he just thought, I'm worthless at this point. I need to kill myself.
Look, a couple weeks ago, I thought it was weird that David went and had all those people killed in response for the disrespect of his men. To me, I'm like, let's disrespectfully look over it, big deal. But you were the one explaining to me that respect for men is a very different thing than it is for women. Mm-hmm. So yeah, to you, that made perfect sense that David had that huge response to that mockery and disrespect that was performed on his men. So I think that shame is in that same category for men in terms of, yes, the shame of this kind of situation I could see driving a man, especially at this time in this kind of society, to go hang himself. Kind of like Judas. Judas was, he felt such shame for the betrayal of the Messiah. He immediately went and hanged himself.
Okay. So what if? So I do agree with Fiercely in this. I agree with you, and I agree with Fiercely, because I think the logical conclusion of what we would be seeing from this is, if the new administration basically, let me put it like this: if Hushai says, "Oh yeah, what Ahithophel told you, that's what we need to do, except you're not taking them as enough men as you need. You need to take like all of Israel that you can gather, like stand on the seashore and go after David." To which possibly Ahithophel thought, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. David's going to take back the kingdom because he's realizing 12,000 won't be enough. That's probably right. They won't be able to rally all those people to do that. That's impossible. David will take back the throne at some point, and I will be toast for betraying him.
Yes.
So therefore, I'm just going to take my own life. What do you guys think in the live chat? Because it's not telling us all this stuff. We're just making as much as we can from the story, what the story is giving us. So he just decided, instead of a public execution or one by a fierce David, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. And he also might have actually just felt such shame and remorse for the betrayal to begin with. Similar to how Judas felt such shame and remorse for what he did, that he just went and sent himself to Sheol.
That's another option. It just doesn't say anything like that. So I'm just, we're trying to make the best of it for what possibly motivated him to kill himself. So verse 24 goes on to say, then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel. Absalom had appointed Amasa over the army in place of Joab. Amasa was the son of a man named Ithra, the Ishmaelite, who had married Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, the sister of Zeruiah, the mother of Joab. So the Israelites and Absalom camped in the land of Gilead. When David came to Mahanaim, he was met by Shobi, son of Nahash, from Rabbah of the Ammonites, Machir, son of Amiel, from Lodebar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite, from Rogelim. They brought beds, basins, and earthen vessels, as well as wheat, barley, flour, roasted grain, beans, lentils, honey, curds, sheep, and cheese from the herd for David and his people to eat. For they said, the people have become hungry, exhausted, and thirsty in the wilderness.
All right. So if anyone wonders what the biblical diet consists of, let's see. Wheat, barley, flour, grain, beans, lentils, honey, curds, which is cheese, sheep, which is meat, and cheese.
That's right.
So dairy, meat, and grains, which are 3 food groups that get completely demonized depending on what diet you're following these days, what fad diet you're on. And please don't come after me, carnivores, okay? I'm not dissing you personally. I personally think that any diet that demonizes an entire biblical food group that God clearly gives us to eat, that's a no for me, in terms of that's not the lifestyle I want to lead. I'm including ancient grains in my diet. I'm including real raw dairy in my diet, and the meat. But yeah, it's all listed right here for us. All we're missing is the wine, really.
It is. There it is. Okay. So there are some people that are sympathetic to David and his men. They're not turning him in. Absalom is killed. Then David reviewed his troops, appointed over them commanders of thousands and of hundreds. He sent out the troops, a third under Joab, a third under Joab's brother, Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the troops, I will surely march out with you as well.
So I guess David isn't completely abdicating his throne. Like he
never did.
He fled, but he hasn't abdicated the throne.
Again, like I said, that's not how you transition power.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about. For just to take some wives on a rooftop is not how you transition power in any kingdom ever in history.
No, but a king fleeing his palace and leaving only a few wives behind and going into hiding, that is something that could be cause for confusion at the very least.
Confusion,
in terms of who is our king.
Yes. The White House was burned down in the War of 1812 by the French, and they had to leave Washington. They regrouped and they came back and rebuilt it later.
Yeah.
The king didn't, the president didn't abdicate his kingship or his presidency at the time. Yeah. He just, you make some moves during warfare.
Yeah.
Right?
And even when a king abdicates their throne, they're typically still executed. Look at Tsar Nicholas, the last Tsar of Russia. He thought he was doing the right thing by just letting the Bolsheviks have everything. We're like, okay, guys, I'm not Tsar anymore. See ya. And no, that wasn't it for him or his whole family. Horrible, sad story. But yeah, even when a king actually abdicates, that doesn't guarantee that he's going to survive.
So verse 3 goes on to say, the people pleaded, you must not go out, for we have to flee. They will not care about us. Even if half of us die, they will not care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It is better now if you support us from the city. I will do whatever what seems best to you, the king replied. So he stood beside the gate while all the troops marched out by hundreds and by thousands. So he seems to have a commanding force with him.
Yeah.
Now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, treat the young man Absalom gently for my sake. And all the people heard the king's orders to each of the commanders regarding Absalom. All right. One thing I just want to say real quick before we get to David's, and that's going to become an issue, by the way, David's compassion for Absalom. Mm-hmm. Before we get into that, I just want to say what we say in the last chapter 17, which bleeds into this chapter 18. David crosses the Jordan and goes over to this other land. Where is it? Here. He crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel and went to the land of Gilead, which is on the east side of the Jordan. Okay. So you remember on the plains of Moab when Moses died on Mount Nebo and Joshua on the plains of Moab where the Midianites they crossed the Jordan, faced Jericho. go north from there on
Okay.
the east side of the Jordan, and that's where you remember you had the territory of was it Manasseh, part Manasseh and Gilead, and I think Reuben, even a little bit of Reuben up there. And remember, they had to make that pledge in Numbers about like we will come across the Jordan and fight with you if possible. So all this activity that we've been experiencing previously has been happening on the west side of the Jordan.
Okay.
And here on the east side of the Jordan, it seems as if those tribes are not involved in the same politics.
Yeah.
Because they got all their men they're giving to David. And they haven't been swayed by Absalom. It seems as if.
Yeah.
So just another example of, like we pointed out earlier in chapter 16, Absalom rallied all the men of Israel and came to Jerusalem. Guys, I know it's confusing, but all does not mean all in the Bible. When it says all, you have to look at the context. You have to look at how it's being used, what's being said, because this is clearly all the men of Israel are not with Absalom.
Yeah.
David's got thousands of soldiers on his side, plus advisors, plus generals. He's got thousands of people in his army. This is another civil war, right? So, I just want to point that out, guys, just as a hermeneutic teaching moment. You've got to look, when it says all, you've got to look at the surrounding context to see what's being spoken about. So,
excuse me.
All right, so we'll start here. Verse 5. Now the king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, treat the young man Absalom gently for my sake. And all the people heard the king's orders to each of the commanders regarding Absalom. Now, I know you wanted to say something.
Huh?
No. I know you wanted to say something a minute ago. Okay. Why are we treating him gently? Why not just kill him? He wants to cut David's head off. Why not just kill Absalom? That face ain't that pretty, I promise.
Yeah, David seems to have some struggles with holding his sons accountable.
Yeah.
Biblically.
So David's army marched into the field to engage Israel, and battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There the people of Israel were defeated by David's servant. Oh, that would be an amazing show. This battle taking place in the forest. That would be amazing. The people of Israel were defeated by David's servants, and the slaughter was great that day, 20,000 men. The battle spread over the whole countryside, and that day the forest devoured more people than the sword. Wow. Now Absalom was riding on his mule when he met the servants of David, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, Absalom's head was caught fast in the tree. The mule under him kept going so that he was suspended in midair. When one of the men saw this, he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. You just saw him? Joab explained. Why'd you not strike him to the ground right there? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt.
Joab knows how this works.
Yeah. What is this warrior's belt? I've never seen that mentioned in scripture. I forgot about that.
Huh.
What is this warrior's belt, guys? Is this where WWF got it?
I don't know.
Excuse me, WWE.
They do that weird belt thing. They do it in boxing too?
You get a belt in boxing, yeah. Yeah,
Crazy.
And UFC.
There are so many things that mankind does that you don't really realize comes from the Bible or are directly inspired by us being made in the image of God. So we like the things that he likes. But that is definitely one that I never would have thought of.
Just checking the chat real quick.
It's actually seemed pretty peaceful today.
Okay. So the man replied, even if 1,000 shekels of silver were weighed out in my hands, I would not raise my hand against the son of the king. So they are worried about David's reactions here. For we heard the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, protect the young man Absalom for my sake. If I had jeopardized my own life and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have abandoned me. But Joab declared, I am not going to wait like this with you. And he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 young men who carried Joab's armor surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. Then Joab blew the ram's horn, and the troops broke off their pursuit of Israel because Joab had restrained them. They took Absalom, cast him into a large pit in the forest, and piled a huge mound of stones over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled, each to his own home. During his lifetime, Absalom had set up for himself a pillar in the king's valley, for he had said, I have no son to preserve the memory of my name. So he gave the pillar his name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument.
I wonder where that is. I wonder if that's an artifact that's either still standing or...
I'm pretty sure it's been destroyed.
How are you pretty sure? How do you know?
Well, the King's Valley, So that's the whole area was destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. Even if it lasted through Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar
I did
burned
forget
everything.
about,
Like everything got burned.
I forgot about his
the whole Temple Mount
approach.
was destroyed down to its foundation.
Yeah, okay.
So like, yeah.
Just wondering if there's another site, over there that confirms.
Highly doubt it's
Scripture.
still standing. Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, "Please let me run and tell the king the good news that the Lord has avenged him of his enemies." But Joab replied, "You are not the man to take good news today. These people don't learn. You may do it another day, but you must not do so today, because the king's son is dead." So Joab said to a Cushite, they're pulling in a dude from Ethiopia. They're like, "Go get an Ethiopian and tell the King David the news." Joab said to a Cushite, "Go tell the king what you've seen." The Cushite bowed to Joab and took off running. Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, however, persisted and said to Joab, "No matter what, please let me also run behind the Cushite." "My son," Joab replied, "why do you want to run, since you will not receive a reward?" "No matter what, I want to run," he replied. "Then run." Joab. So Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. Jeez. So look, you think the Ethiopians can run? Apparently Ahimaaz, he can run too. Now, by the way, guys, this is where marathon runners came from, in case you guys don't know.
Ethiopia?
No, just from the ancient messengers.
Oh,
yeah, they would run great distances.
Interesting. Yeah. I could see how that developed into a sport.
Yeah. So David was sitting between the two gates when the watchmen went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall. They looked out and they saw a man running alone. So he called out and he told the king, "If he is alone," the king replied, "he bears good news." As the first runner drew near, the watchman saw another man running, and he called out to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man's running alone. This one also brings good news to the king." The watchman said, "The first man appears to be running like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." "This is a good man," said the king. "Here comes with good news." Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "All is well," and he bowed face down before the king. He continued, "Blessed be the Lord your God. He has delivered up the men who raised their hands against the Lord my king." The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom all right?" And Ahimaaz replied, "When Joab sent the servants, your king's servants and your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I do not know what it was." "Move aside," said the king, "and stand here." So he stepped aside. Just then the Cushite came and said, "May my lord the king hear the good news. Today the Lord has avenged you of all who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom all right?" And the Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up against you to harm you be like that young man."
Nobody wants to say it.
The king was shaken and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he walked, he cried out, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son."
David, bud. You confuse me sometimes.
I'm telling you, he is a guys. I know there's a big debate, but on what was the ethnic visual appearance of ancient Israel.
Oh.
But he's doing too much. He does way too much in all instances. So I'll let you guys leave it there. Either way, David is emotional.
Explain that to me later.
Yeah, David is emotional, and he is definitely he's doing the opposite of Deuteronomy 13.
Yeah,
he's extending passion to someone that deserves corporal punishment, right? Where he should be, he's using too much empathy, but this requires someone who's tried to kill the Lord's anointed and cause a coup and a rebellion against. Yeah, this would be breaking a multitude of Torah commands, all of which deserve death. And so David's being too compassionate. This
is just reminiscent of the same issue that Isaac had with Esau and Jacob, and how he had such a fondness and tenderness for his son Esau that he couldn't see that Esau had a wicked heart and wasn't right for the blessing of the priesthood and all that. So this is similar, where David, it's like just by mere biology that these are his sons, even though he probably isn't very close with them. He probably hasn't had a whole lot of time hanging out with them and playing ball out in the courtyard of the palace or anything. but it's his kin, it's his progeny. So he's got this very strong. Now, here's my thing. Having a son myself, I can't imagine having to execute your own son or send your own son to the execution chamber. At the same time, at least right now, my son is a really great guy. He's a sweet kid to have around. So he's not engaging.
He's not trying to kill you.
Yeah, he's not engaging in all this actual wicked, outright sinful behavior. So I don't know how maybe my feelings would change once he's an adult. And if he goes down a path of, horrible wickedness, I mean, we're different. It's different time now in terms of we wouldn't necessarily have to send him to any judges to be to receive the death penalty for breaking commandments, but that's what was commanded. So that is a very hard thing when you think about Yeshua talking about those who don't hate their mother and father to love him, making that contrast of what who you truly love at the end of the day and who you truly serve. That's what comes to mind for me when we talk about these kind of issues where you were expected to handle your own child, your own adult child acting in these sinful ways. And sometimes that included capital punishment. Yep. So yeah, you would have to love the Lord more than your child, your adult child. Adult child. Clear. Adult child. You would have to love the Lord more than your adult child to make that kind of a decision.
Yep. So. That's why there's the death penalty for the adult child who's a drunkard or a lazy, who's not willing to work, right, and be a part of society, which would require, the parents not to try to intervene in that situation when the judges have to inflict judgment. Same thing with all the other death penalties where the judges would have had to inflict judgment. The family tries to intervene, you're going to have a fight. Yeah. And I can only imagine the pressure on the judges to where in a situation where it's one of the king's sons, one of the princes, and you're like, wait, we got to put a prince to death? Is the king going to come after us? Yeah. So I'm sure there was confliction. I remember hearing one time a rabbi was talking about the Sanhedrin before the 1st century AD and some of the writings about how they would make judges, or the judges wrote about how they basically had a saying that if someone put more than 5 people to death in a year, then it was considered a bloody court. Wow. Yeah, because they were trying to show more mercy than anything. Yeah. Obviously, you want to show mercy, but like, this dude's trying to take over the kingdom. Yeah. He's already setting up statues to himself in the valley. Like, bro, Moloch is coming back in a matter of TikTok. Yeah. Like, come on now. Like, you gotta stop this dude. So yeah, there's a lot there. It's a tough situation David's in, but now here is where it gets wild, because Joab takes some courage and says some stuff to David that needs to be said. Then it was reported to Joab, the king is weeping and mourning over Absalom. And that day's victory was turned into mourning for all the people, because on that day they were told the king is grieving over his son. So they returned to the city quietly that day, as people steal away in humiliation after fleeing the battle. But the king covered his face and cried out at the top of his voice, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son!" Then Joab went into the house and said to the king, "Today you have disgraced all your servants who have saved your lives and the lives of your sons and daughters and of your wives and of your concubines. You love those who hate you, and you hate those who love you. For if you have made it clear today that the commanders and the soldiers mean nothing to you, I know today that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead, it would have pleased you. Now therefore get up, get out and speak comfort to your servants. For I swear by the Lord that if you do not go out, not a man will remain with you tonight. This will be worse for you than all the adversity that has befallen you from your youth until now." Yes, Joab.
Straight up. I didn't like Joab for a little while, but he's making a comeback for me.
Yeah. Yeah, this needs to be said. Look, if you're going to mourn for Absalom, do it quietly. Yeah. Do it privately. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
It's not like people can't understand. There's a loss here for you, but
yeah,
what would be going on if this hadn't been a loss?
Yeah, Absalom was not the person you want control of anything. He was not anointed by God. It would have just been an unrighteous king who takes over, and we see what happens in the following chapters, the following books. We see what happens and how much innocent people die, how many innocent children are given to Molech over and over and over again when an unrighteous king takes over. Yep. So, yeah, bro, that's why he says you hate the people that love you, right? Like the people that of Israel that do love you, and you're You're showing compassion for this guy that was about to do mass unrighteousness on us.
Yeah, all these men went out and put their lives on the line to battle this guy and his army. They killed 20,000 of his men for you. And then you not only did you not want us to not execute the leader of this rebellion, but now you're going to mourn the leader and make us all feel guilty and shamed for doing what needed to be done. So yeah, that was some harsh words that needed to be spoken.
Yeah, it is a tough situation David's in, because the position of his rulership, he needs to maintain righteous ruling and let the people know that he loves them and cares for them, and that he saved them from someone that was a usurper.
Yeah,
he needs to let them know that and show that with strength and confidence, like a righteous king should. But he is facing the consequences of what Nathan told him and all the sticky emotions that go with it. And so this is because essentially it seems as if had he not done this thing with Bathsheba, Absalom wouldn't have done this. That's when that was announced.
Yes, well, that certainly would. Any doubt in Absalom's mind about his father's leadership, that would have just been amplified tenfold by what happened with Bathsheba. So, you know, he would have been emboldened by that. Look at what this guy did. Look at this king. He's not honorable. He's murdering men and stealing their wives. That could have been part of what he was talking about at the gates when he was swaying people over to his side. He could have very easily been using that Bathsheba situation as part of his, arguments against David's leadership. So, yeah, this is definitely some long-lasting consequences.
I'm sorry, fiercely. That's a tough decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bless you for doing the right thing, though.
Yeah.
Like, truly.
And it looks like your son is blessed now, too, because he's serving God. But clearly there was a rough transition point to all that, and he's probably still paying for things. But, yeah, man, that's tough, brother. It's tough. And Absalom would not have mourned David.
No way.
No.
Nope.
He would have
celebrated.
He would have celebrated and probably built another statue to himself.
Yeah. Set up a pillar to himself. Jeez, men. Not from a feminist standpoint. Just sometimes men.
I have never in my life have I thought setting up a pillar to myself. Like, that is wild. That's wild work right there. So the king got up and sat in the gate, and all the people were told, "Behold, the king is sitting in the gate." So they all came before the king. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled, each man to his home. And all the people throughout the tribes of Israel were arguing, "The king rescued us from the hand of our enemies and delivered us from the hand of the Philistines, but now he has fled the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, the man we anointed over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about restoring the king?"
Interesting.
Look at this. The man that we anointed over us.
Yep.
Not the angel of the Lord, not the prophet, but the man that they anointed.
Yeah.
Then King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. "Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to restore the king to his palace, since the talk of all Israel has reached the king in his quarters? You're my brothers, you're my own flesh and blood, so why would you be the last to restore the king? And say to Amasa, aren't you my flesh and blood? May God punish me, and ever so severely, if from now on you're not the commander of my army in the place of Joab." So he swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah as though they were one man, and they sent word to the king, "Return, you and all your servants." So the king returned, and when he arrived at the Jordan, the men of Judah came to Gilgal to meet him and escort him across the Jordan. Then Shimei, son of Gera, Then Shimei, son of Gera, a Benjaminite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David, along with 1,000 men of Benjamin, as well as Ziba, the steward of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed down to the Jordan before the king and crossed at the ford to carry over the king's household and to do what was good in his sight. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell down before the king and said, "My lord, do not hold me guilty. Do not remember your servant's wrongdoing on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king not take it to heart, for your servant knows that I've sinned. So here I am today as the first of all the house of Joseph to come down to meet my lord the king." Then Abishai, the son of Zerah, said, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?"
Wasn't Shimei the guy who came out and was cursing the Lord, was cursing David? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. David replied, "The sons of Zerah, what have I to do with you, that you should be my adversaries today? Should any man be put to death in Israel today? Am I not indeed aware that today I am king of Israel?" So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king swore an oath to him. Again, because when he said, I deserve this.
Yeah.
I've been cursed.
Yeah.
Nathan came and told me this would happen.
Yeah.
And so this is where he's like humbly accepting. And even though this guy, you know, I don't think I would be throwing rocks at him, but so it's, you know, maybe a little shout here and there, you know, like that was customary, but I don't know if I'd be trying to throw rocks at his head. So anyway, then Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, went down to meet the king. He had not cared for his feet or trimmed his mustache or washed his clothes from the day the king had left until the day he returned.
Well, that's dedication. I think I'll start doing that anytime you travel away, baby. Just in honor of you, I will not shower or clip my toenails until you come home to me.
Yay! I don't know if it's
It's gonna be all those natural pheromones, baby.
I don't know if this was his protest, baby. Remember, it's Mephibosheth. He can't walk, so
That's true.
It could be because he don't have this regular attendance from the king's palace.
Could be true.
Yeah. Okay. But if you decide to take a different hygiene routine, I will pray for you. Verse 26, my lord the king replied, because I'm lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled so I may ride on it and go with the king. But my servant Ziba deceived me, and he slandered your servant to my lord the king. See, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah. I was saying Mephibosheth was claiming, Mephibosheth said, I'm going to get back everything that was in my household.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, what's Absalom telling? But he's saying that, oh, Ziba just lied.
Yeah.
Yet my lord the king is like the angel of God, so do what is good in your eyes. For all the house of my grandfather deserves death from my lord the king, yet you have set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right then do I have to keep appealing to the king? The king replied, why say any more? I hereby declare that you and Ziba are to divide the land. And Mephibosheth said to the king, instead, since my lord the king has safely come down to his own house, let Ziba take it all. So Ziba's really getting away out here. This man's doing crazy stuff and getting away with it. The Lord is merciful to Ziba like he is to us. Whew. Now Barzillai, the Gileadite, it's wrapping up all the loose ends.
Yeah.
Now Barzillai, the Gileadite, had come down from Rogelim to cross the Jordan with the king and send him on his own. These people never thought to build a bridge over Jordan. So, I don't know. Whatever. I don't. When did bridge building start? Surely it was like they already had bridges by this time.
They would have known. I mean, they had ships and all that. I would think they would understand the concept of a bridge. Barzillai
was quite old, 80 years of age, and since he was a very wealthy man, he had provided for the king while he stayed in Mahanaim. The king said to Barzillai, cross over with me and I'll provide for you at my side in Jerusalem. But Barzillai replied, how many years of my life remain that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I am now 80 years old. Can I discern what is good and what's not? Can your servant taste what he eats or drinks?
Oh, jeez.
The dude got COVID. Can I still hear the voice of singing men away? The guy's like, I'm on my way out.
I'm on my deathbed, bro.
I'm on my way out. I can't taste anything. I can't hear anything. I barely see you. Why should your servant be added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go with the king only a short distance past the Jordan. Why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please let your servant return that I may die in my own city near the tomb of my father and mother. But here is your servant Shimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king and do for him what is good in your sight.
Here, take this guy in my place.
Yeah. The king replied, Shimham will cross over with me, and I will do for him what's good in your sight, and I will do for whatever you desire of me. So all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and Barzillai returned home. Then the king crossed over to Gilgal, and Shimham crossed over with him. All the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel escorted the king. Soon all the men of Israel came to the king and asked, why did our brothers, the men of Judah, take you away secretly and bring the king and his household across the Jordan together with all of David's men? And all the men of Judah replied to the men of Israel, we did this because the king is our relative. Why does this anger you? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense or received anything for ourselves? We have 10 shares in the king, answered the men of Israel. So we have more claim to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of restoring our king? But the men of Judah spoke more fiercely than the men of Israel. They can't stop fighting for 2 seconds.
They really can't, man. They really can't.
Now, the same people that were just engaged in a civil war are claiming who's more loyal to David, and they're fighting over that. Father, come quickly. Isaiah's words in Isaiah 64 become more relevant every day in my life. Yeah. Father, if you would just rend the heavens and come down, please, please.
I try to tell people that it seems like this everyone thinks like all these doctrinal problems came around because of Christianity. And I'm like, this seems to be part of the condition of man, where we really struggle with unity, even when we share the same beliefs in God. Like that's why Yeshua has to come and rule with a rod of iron, because he has to enforce unity.
Yep.
It has to be enforced because we really stink at it. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. This is why we need the new covenant. This is why we need this new incorruptible heart and mind with the laws put on it, so that we don't behave like this. So that people that are peace is restored. The guy who serves the Lord is back in charge, and the uprising has been squashed, and now the people left over that are loyal to David are starting to bicker amongst themselves. Come on, bro. Come on. And look what the men of Judah are claiming. Well, we have lineage.
Yeah.
And the men of Israel are like, we got 10 parts of the house of Israel.
We got more lineage than you.
Talking about? They're like, we're part of the 10 tribes of Israel, not the 2. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's hilarious. Oh, that's hilarious. Thank you so much. I appreciate the super chat. Who's this? No glory on my name.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the generous super chat. He said, I'm really enjoying this Sabbath, this fellowship. Thank you both for your zeal, for your Yahweh's word, and spending time with me, spending time with us. May Yah bless your family. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for spending time with us.
Yeah, appreciate you being here.
I mean, we could do the live stream without all of you guys, but it wouldn't be nearly as fun and fellowshipy.
That's right. So chapter 20. Now a worthless man named Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjaminite, happened to be there, and he blew the ram's horn and shouted, we have no share in David, no inheritance in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, O Israel. So all the men of Israel deserted David to follow Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed by their king all the way from Jordan to Jerusalem. So the guys who were just claiming, we are with David more than you are, because some random dude blew a horn. I don't know who Bichri is.
He's a worthless guy, apparently.
But he's not. Who's Bichri or Sheba? Is Bichri like the king?
Son of Bichri.
Is Bichri the prince of Benjamin? Is that?
I don't know.
Like, why would they listen to this?
I don't know, but if you look at the timing here, this isn't a few years after David's restored. This is while David is still on his journey to Jerusalem after just crossing the Jordan.
Yep, right here.
So there's not a whole lot of time that has passed between these men of Israel fighting over who's more loyal to the king.
Yeah.
To now being like, hey, let's be loyal to this worthless king.
we even see this with Christ's disciples when they were asking who's the greatest among the disciples. They were fighting with each other about it. And then secretly, James and John, sons of Zebedee, their mother, came to appeal to Christ to be like, would you hey, by the way, Christ, I know you're teaching our children, but could you put them at your right hand when you? And he's like, woman, you don't know what you're asking for. And then all the other disciples heard that this happened. They got mad with James and John. Because they're like, what are you guys doing? Vying for special favor with our master? What are you doing? Oh, guys,
the problem with man.
The New Jerusalem has 12 gates. The New Jerusalem is built in an equilateral direction of 3 gates on each side of a 4-sided city. There is no favoritism in the New Jerusalem.
Yeah,
it's the gates of Israel. They're all
no partiality.
It's
the only partiality is shown to the people who keep the commandments.
That's right. When David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace. He placed them in a house under guard. He provided for them, but he no longer slept with them. They were confined until the day of their death, living as widows.
That's really sad. That's really sad for them.
Why put them under guard? I'm not sure about all that. Put them under guard.
Because
they just can't leave?
Well, they were confined until the day of their death.
Well, under house arrest. I mean, they had a house. But the point is...
But that's what I mean.
Yeah, I get it.
They were imprisoned.
It's not good. It's like a forced nun situation. But I'm wondering if, because of the nature of what Absalom did, if he was afraid of them leaving the country and some other king saying, I've got one of David's wives, and trying to do the same thing publicly or something. I don't know.
Or... an angry mob coming after them, maybe thinking they were complicit, or consented.
Oh, so you're thinking maybe for their own protection?
Maybe. They
Possibly.
definitely would have been shamed women after that. The culture at that time, absolutely. They would have been viewed differently by the men of society. So certainly probably wouldn't have become wives again. But imprisoning them, under guard until they die definitely seems like, to me, it makes sense that he wouldn't go into them again. Like that was certainly something that seemed normal back then if something like that happened. But yeah. That confining them to a household is strange to me.
In the same way when Reuben took
Yes.
Jacob's Bilhah, he remember he sent her to a different city to live.
Yes.
And then he never touched her again.
Yeah.
In Book of Jubilees. So thank you so much, Maccabean Warrior. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you for the super chat. He says, thank you all. Y'all bless everyone. Yeah, man. Bless you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a sad detail.
Makes you wonder if that's like was written down somewhere. You know, like this is what you do in case this ever happens. You know,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
if the woman's not going to be killed, she has to be removed somewhere. Because they were supposed to be killed.
Well, that's if they weren't R-worded. So I personally think they were. See, now I think this is a situation where they were R-worded, even though the scriptures don't clearly say that.
Okay.
But with basically an invading,
gotcha. Yeah.
You know, guy trying to call himself king and just, you know, taking David's wives. I think that's also why they weren't killed, because they didn't willingly participate in that adultery with Absalom.
All right. Then the king said to Amasa, summon the men of Judah to come to me within 3 days and be here yourself. So Amasa went to summon Judah, but he took longer than the time allotted him. And David said to Abishai, now Sheba the son of Bechri will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servants and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and elude us. And I just want to point out, guys, we're in 2 Samuel. We're like, I don't know, 50 to 100 years removed from Judges chapter 19, when the Benjaminites started the first civil war.
Yeah.
And here's another Benjaminite, still got issues.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the father chose the first king outside of the line of Judah from the tribe of Benjamin. Makes you wonder if he's like, I'm going to take this, I'm just guessing. This is not scripture. I'm just commenting, just talking. Makes you wonder if he's like forcing interactions so they have a chance to forgive each other. You think that Benjamin is a stench in your nose because he caused this? Well, I'm going to make the first king out of him. And you're going to have to worship, you have to serve the king, right?
Yeah.
But from the Benjaminites' perspective, whatever grievance they had left over needs to be addressed as well. And clearly, they got some issues still going on.
Absolutely.
They clearly do. So Joab's men, along with the Keretites, the Peletites, and all the mighty men, marched out of Jerusalem in pursuit of Sheba, the son of Bichri. And while they were at the great stone in Gibeon, Amasa joined. Guys, I just want to let you know that this is an old joke. This is how women tell directions. A woman will give you a landmark. Men gives you the cross street and the physical address. So there's moments in scripture where it says, well, he went to the east along this mountain valley, right? That's a man's directions. But by the big stone, there's a big stone over there in Gibeon. That's a woman's directions.
Are you saying a woman wrote this?
No, I'm just making jokes. I'm just saying this is the modern joke about when women give directions. It's through landmarks. Men give through like detailed turn left, turn right, turn east, turn west, take this street, that kind of stuff.
I'm not one of those women, but it's because I lived in Fort Collins and the mountains were on the west. So I knew where west, east, and north and south were because the mountains were always on the west. So, but when I don't have the mountains up on my west side, I don't know where I am.
Yeah, the warmer.
When I don't have those big natural landmarks, I don't know which way is west.
Now, Joab was dressed in military attire with a dagger strapped to his belt. Does he have a warrior's belt? And as he stepped forward, he slipped the dagger.
By now, he better.
Are they wearing it on the field, though, is what I'm wondering. As he stepped forward, he slipped the dagger from his sheath. Are you well, my brother? Joab asked Amasa. And with his right hand, Joab grabbed Amasa by the beard to kiss him. That's weird. Amasa was not on guard against the dagger in Joab's hand, and Joab stabbed him in the stomach, spilled out his intestines on the ground. And Joab did not need to strike him again, for Amasa was dead. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, the son of Bichri. One of Joab's young men stood near Amasa and said, "Whoever favors Joab and whoever's for David, let him follow Joab." But Amasa wallowed in his blood in the middle of the road, and when the man saw that all the troops were stopping there, he dragged the body off the road into a field and threw a garment over it. As soon as Amasa's body was removed from the road, all the men went on with Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel Beth Makkah, and through the entire region of the Berites. He gathered together and followed him. And Joab's troops came and besieged Sheba in Abel Beth Makkah, and built a siege ramp against the outer rampart of the city. As all the troops with Joab were battering the wall to topple it, a wise woman called out from the city, "Listen, listen, please tell Joab to come here so that I may speak with him." And when he had come near to her, the woman asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he replied. "Listen to the words of your servant," she said. "I'm listening," he answered. Then the woman said, "Long ago they used to say, 'Seek counsel at Abel,' and that is how disputes were settled. I am among the peaceable and faithful in Israel, but you are trying to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the Lord's inheritance?" "Far be it," Joab declared. "Far be it from me to swallow up or destroy. That is not the case, but a man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Deliver him alone, and I will depart from the city." "Look," the woman replied, "his head will be thrown to you over the wall."
Wow.
It's great. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise counsel, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So he blew the ram's horn, and his men dispersed from the city east to his own home, and Joab returned to the king in Jerusalem.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Joab was over the whole army of Israel. Benai, son of Jehoiada, was over the Keretites and the Peletites. Adoram was in charge of the forced labor. Jehoshaphat was son of Ahilud, was the recorder. Shiva was the scribe. Zadok and Abiathar were priests, and Ira the Jerite was David's priests.
Interesting.
Interesting. So what's interesting about this town, this Beth Makkah town, that decided, we're not going to harbor this dude. We're gonna take action to our own hands. We're going to show that we're faithful.
Yeah.
This is how easy rebellions could be squashed in every country throughout all of history.
Yeah.
As opposed to letting the usurper continue to rally people, continue to, you know what I'm saying, to be, "Oh, he came to us. What are we going to do? We need the National Guard to get here." No, you don't. You need to you need to be able to assess the situation with your own wisdom and realize this guy's clearly in the wrong. This is not the way of Yahweh. This is not how we live. This is, there's already been too much battle and warfare, and this is not good. Let's just take care of it ourselves.
Yeah, we don't get much in the way of details on Joab's faith or his righteousness, his works, in terms of anything outside of this warfare. But he definitely seems to be, the motivating force behind actually following through with things that need to be followed through on with these rebellions and this warfare. And it doesn't seem like he has a struggle with hesitation. He is a good military commander, it looks like he is a good, effective leader militarily, even better than David. David gets all the accolades, but Joab seems to be his right-hand man in all of these military campaigns. And even when David is home mourning, his enemy, Joab is the one out there executing the enemy and fighting against the enemy's troops, So Joab, like I said, I didn't really like him at first, but he's kind of becoming like an unsung hero.
Joab is
doing the story.
Joab is doing for David what David used to do for Saul.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why they were singing songs about David.
Yeah.
Previously. So David's older though at this point. He's 60. I think he's 60 at this point, if I'm remembering right, because I think Solomon's about to be born, and Solomon is 12 years old when David dies at 72 years old. I think that's, if I'm remembering properly. So that would make David about 60 right now. So he's had his days. He's older, and he's got younger men fighting as generals. Yes.
So we're at Q&A. We're done reading. So you guys have questions?
Yes, Carmela. Not all sacrifices are for sin. A lot of them are for festival and joy.
Yeah.
Remember, they're just meals. It's just a meal.
Yeah, very few of them actually are for sin. If you read through Leviticus and Numbers, most of the sacrifices are for daily, morning and evening, the feast days, the Sabbath day sacrifices, like sacrifices for sin. We have the one big feast day of Atonement, and then individual guilt and sin offerings that people brought, on their own, at their own frequency, however often that was needed.
Vow offerings, first fruits, and tithes. Yeah. So it was like and those will continue. Those are part of worshiping Yahweh, is to bring forward your tithe and your first fruit offerings at the appointed times throughout the year, from which you can bring forward according to the harvest of your land. So you got 3 opportunities throughout the year for the 3 major feasts that you can bring forward your tithe or your first fruits. So that's just meals. So yeah.
We do need to address there's a couple questions coming in about concubines, and we had what Torah portion did we discuss concubines? I think we discussed concubines in our biblical marriage video as well.
Yeah, they're considered wives. But the idea is not that they committed. She was saying that they would be accused of adultery had they not cried out, and the punishment was death had they been considered adulterous, as opposed to being physically aggressed upon.
Yeah, I think what you're missing, both Tanya and Fiercely Unorthodox, concubines were wives. We have this modern use of the word concubine that I think a lot of us get from movies that's actually not biblical. Biblical concubines were legal wives. They were just in some different kind of status as in terms of maybe order of coming into the marriage or whatever, but they were legal wives. That's why these women were put away, and David did not go into them again, but they also didn't go be single and go marry other men, because they were still legally married to David. So we have this idea of concubines that they're like slaves for a king, and he's just, they're just there for him to go get his jollies off. But we've seen that in movies. The Bible doesn't describe concubines that way. They were actual wives, just like of a lesser status of some sort.
In chapter 12, Nathan calls them wives.
Yeah.
He says, a man will take your wives and have them on the rooftop in front of the people. And then when the story unfolds, it sees he left some of his concubines behind. It's just another word for wives. Yeah. But as we've assumed throughout Scripture, it seems to be a term given to anyone who's a second wife or further down.
Yeah.
So the first wife was considered wife only, and then everyone after is a wife, and they're in wife status, but they're also referred to as concubines.
Yeah, I mean, even in modern day plural marriage, like in Mormonism, that's kind of how it's like you're not just a wife, you're first wife or second wife or third wife or fourth wife. And that's how they talk about themselves. That's how the men discuss their marriages growing. My first wife was, my second wife is. So there's a label involved based on what order you come into the marriage. And it seems that concubine was the label for plural wives in the Bible. Yeah. So how other kings did their concubines and how that word was defined for them, that might have a different connotation, but biblically, yes, they were legally wives.
Logical idiot. Good question. What's the difference between putting God to the test and asking for a sign? Putting God to the test is asking him, is expecting God or asking God to do something wrong or sinful. As far as he would be wrong or sinful to break his own word by not following through with caring for you as a part of a covenant, which is why the people complained at Meribah, and it says that the people tested him at Meribah, to where they assumed evil of the Lord, that he wouldn't do something for them according to how he'd already promised to do something for them, to which he then did it for them. But then he refers to that moment in retrospect as they tested me at Meribah, right? Because they were assuming evil of him. In the same way, it's like a sign is just someone that is, like Gideon with the fleece, right? Put it out, it's dry one morning, put it out the next morning, it's wet when there's no dew. So he's asking for something to show you like that the word of the Lord has told you, and he wants a sign. Sometimes the sign showed up as an actual angel. Yeah. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it showed up with some other casting of lots, the breastplate or the ephod or the Urim and Thummim, what generically referred to as the ephod. Go ask of the ephod, looking for a sign. That in itself was a sign, because it would actually be a way to communicate through the priesthood that the Father was affirming or denying something. And so the asking for a sign in good faith is that you believe God's trying to tell you something and you want to be obedient, but you just need validation, versus assuming God's going to do something evil to you when he's already told you he's going to do good for you. And then you're testing his patience, man. You're testing him. That's my understanding.
No, we're not raising baby chicks. We just have the window open, and there's just something falling off of his. But
nothing.
It was a thing. It's just a toy.
Yeah.
No, we just have the window open, and there's birds outside. I'm gonna run to the restroom.
Hairless primate. There's depends on which extra biblical work you're talking about, but I mean he only translated a few extra biblical, like Enoch, Jubilees, Testament to our Patriarchs. Which was another one he did? I can't remember all the ones he's done right now, but it's not like the extensive list of them. So you'd have to go to other translators to try to find all of them. So, but there's nothing wrong with his works. You just as always, with the internet at our fingertips, guys, try to get as many free resources as you can find so that you can cross-reference and compare translations of ancient languages. The Lawrence translation is just as good of an Enoch translation as the R.H. Charles. All right. Yahweh is King 7 is asking, I just got accepted in med school and want to be a surgeon, but I'm scared to go into med field. I have vaccine exemptions for my clinicals. I feel God is calling me, but nervous still. Thoughts? I don't know all the details of what's required of you once you actually achieve to the status of surgeon and in that particular hospital, that particular field, what licensing is involved, if they're going to force you to do all the standard protocols of that particular hospital and take all the vaccines. I don't know if I apologize. I don't know all the details of being a surgeon. If you can be a traveling, so like a contract surgeon, or if you have to be signed on with a specific hospital and abide by all their medical protocols. I apologize. I don't have enough knowledge of the field itself. I'm not a surgeon.
I wanted to encourage you. I would say that these fields need people that are Christians, that are anti-jab, that understand the truth about brain death and organ harvesting. I don't think it's a bad thing to have more believers in these fields. You just have to be prepared
to lose your job if it comes to it.
That also, the environment you're going to be working in is very corporatized and profit driven. You're going to find out that CEOs and boards of hospitals care very little about patients as opposed to profit. So, you got to go in with the right expectations. And I wouldn't say you're in sin just for being in that field. I would encourage you to bring a new perspective to that field and, be the Christian surgeon who's praying while working on somebody and who's honest about jabs and who's not encouraging people to unplug the machine so that organs can be taken from the loved one. There can definitely be more Ben Carsons in the world, honestly. So
yeah, for sure.
Just be aware of the community you're stepping into. Maintain
that emotional fortitude to know that it may come down to it one day where clearly they're not going to hold you down and stick you with a new vaccine, but you may lose your position.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what it looks like for medical school if you're going into being a surgeon, but I know that a lot of medical schools just across the board as standard practice promote abortion, and we'll have some medical students sit in on them, like just as part of medical training, not because they're planning to go be OB-GYNs or abortionists. So that's another thing to be aware of if you're pro-life. Oh, is it Diane? There's also that aspect in the medical community that is, their consciences are very seared to that particular sin. So yeah, just be ready to say no. If you posted a question earlier, it's way too far up in the chat for us to go find it. So please just
repost
post it again.
It's okay. Just repost it. Red Cardinal. This is a great question. We hear this a lot as well. You've probably seen me in some debates with pastors or professors address this question. And the easiest rebuttal is that when they say, well, I rest every day, every day is my Sabbath because Jesus is my Sabbath rest. For one, Jesus didn't call himself your Sabbath rest. He called himself the Lord of the Sabbath. And two, the Sabbath instruction is not to rest every day.
Yeah.
So even in this metaphor of I rest every day in Christ, well, then you're not obeying the Sabbath. The Sabbath is to rest one day. You have 6 other days to which to work, but you need to rest one day, specifically the 7th day of the week, and also the Sabbath of the feast days. So the same people often that claim Jesus is my Sabbath rest, they ignore the Sabbaths of the festival days in Leviticus 23, Exodus 23, Numbers 28 and 29, just in talking about the 7th day, which they still in Catholic tradition honor it on the first day of the week. But yet, they how dare you call it the Sabbath, right? Then they get mad. But they still typically will take their day off on that day. So on a Sunday. So it's kind of, there's a lot of hypocritical language. There's a lot of contradictory thought process that goes into this. And just over and above all, there is no command to rest every day. The resting idea in the Hebrew, the book of Hebrews in chapter 4, the whole context of resting in that context is about obeying God and not about physically taking a day off. That's what we talk about. We rest in Christ is obeying God through Christ. So the actual command for the Sabbath is to rest one day a week, and you have 6 other days to work. So if you're claiming, oh, I'm not going to take a day off to work every day because I rest every day in Christ, you're not obeying the command, not even the metaphor of the command. You're just rewording it to suit your own new covenant theology that's promoted by a lot of Catholic and Protestant churches. So that's the best general blanket that I can give you, but without actually being in that conversation, I can't argue it for you beyond that.
I just wanted to respond to fiercely unorthodox. We know that concubine has a different definition as wife. That's why we're saying for all legal intents and purposes, concubines were wives. And that's why we were trying to say they're on some different kind of level legally, like they're on a lower level of wife legally somehow. We don't get an exact detail on how, because we see that they're treated like wives in all these other manners where they're provided for. They cannot go have intercourse with other men, like when they're violated, like they were by Absalom, they're considered widows at that point. Like they live single for the rest of their lives. So we agree that, concubine has a different definition. We're just not sure exactly what it is, because when you read the law, when you read what we have as the law, legally, they seem to have all the same rights as a wife. So if you can find what this, like where the Torah, specifically delineates what makes a concubine, legally lesser than somehow than a wife, would love to see the verses, but that's what we were saying.
This is where Nathan is calling what's called later concubines. Nathan calls them wives here. So it's an interchangeable term. We know there's 2 different words in the Hebrew, but the concept is being spoken of with 2 different words, and the context of the concept is interchangeable. It's all the concubines have all the privileges of the quote unquote first wife, and this is also in the command of the Lord in Deuteronomy, which you should not spare marital privileges to a second or third wife. So, and we don't even encourage you to take on a second or third wife. Do not get us wrong. We speak highly against that. We are very adamantly against multiple wives.
Just from a wisdom. Like what we know, it's not sin, blah, 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 but
the way we talk about this is there is provision made for it in God's law, but there is no prescription for anyone to do it.
Except with the death of the brother.
But he still has a choice. He doesn't have to do it.
That's true.
So there's no prescription that you have to marry multiple women, but there is provision in case you do, and there's reasons for why a person would, and it's not prescribed. It's a consequence of taking care of the woman, basically. So we are very adamantly teaching and have always taught against taking multiple wives. So that's basically made us a stench in the nostrils of many in the Torah community. Yeah, Emmanuel. I'm not sure if this is an additional statement to something you said already, but
Yeah, it almost feels like
yeah,
like
yeah, it seems like you're mocking God's ways.
yeah.
But I hope you're not. Maybe you're just maybe you're just a poor communicator. How you try your question. But if you sin right now, we're told in Scripture in 1 John 1:8-9, he who's with sin, he should confess his sins. So Christ, who's faithful and just, will cleanse you of all unrighteousness. And that's why he's our high priest ministry in heaven's temples for us right now. So the concept of atonement done by the priesthood in heaven, which Christ now is the high priest over the angels who officiate that priesthood in heaven and heaven's temple. There's, according to God's law, Emmanuel, if you're familiar with God's law, there's daily sacrifices for atonement, morning and evening. And then there's weekly, and then there's festival sacrifices for atonement. So, and then of course there's the yearly Day of Atonement, which the high priest presides over specifically. All the rest of the year, he definitely has authority over all the other lesser priests, providing for the dailies as well. So when you say a confession of sin to Christ, who's your high priest, it is a prayer to the Father. Is you are praying to the Father for forgiveness. Christ hears those prayers given to you, relayed by the angels. He then goes into his actual job as high priest to make atonement. I would encourage you to study Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17. Christ is actively making atonement for our sin in heaven's temple in service to God. So, in case you're not aware, that's how that process works.
Yeah, isn't there actually literally a passage in Jubilees that answers that question?
Haven't read that yet. I was looking at something else.
Oh.
So what's going on here? Heat Seeker Pepper Eater. How you doing? Welcome back. He says, is there any other scriptures that explain who the Lord is in Exodus 4:24? It makes it sound like it's Yahweh who jet Moses and wanted to kill him. This is, I got to pull it up, but it'd be just a minute. It's in Jubilees 49, brother. Go to Jubilees 49. It talks about how Satan approached Moses on the way back to Egypt and wanted to kill him over the circumcision issue. And so it's that is. So if you put the two concepts together, it seems, if we're trying to give a narrative for again, I don't distrust the Father's plan. I just know when I get to heaven, one of the questions I'm going to ask with as much humility and humbleness that I can muster is, Father, there's just a lot of stories in Scripture I wanted a lot more details to, but there are not a lot of details to. But if you put together Jubilees 49, where it talks about, it's either 47 or 49, where it talks about this moment with Moses and how it's Satan who tries to come kill. And so this is where it's, Zipporah has to circumcise Gershom real quick to fulfill the requirements of the covenant. And it was Satan who was seeking an occasion. So the guess is that Satan, who's the accuser of the brethren, is that he's going forward before the Lord to say, look, Satan wants to kill you. And Satan actually has a lawful reason right now to bring an accusation against you because you've neglected this command of the Lord. But yet I'm about to send you to your people as a representative of the Lord, who's an agent, as a prophet, and you're still in sin over this issue that can be done. And so therefore, the angel of the Lord to our understanding, the angel of the Lord that would be trying to kill him is in response to, well, this is a problem. You're about to profane the name of the Lord, but all you got to do is you can take care of it, right? Whereas it's not Satan that's going to try. It's Satan who's accusing Moses in front of God, saying you need to act on this, because Moses is in blatant denial about this and has been for a long time. So that's our best understanding as far as putting the two passages together, how they describe the events. Satan being the accuser of the brethren, whom then the angel of the Lord would have had to come and take care of business. Remember, this is the same angel of the Lord that we see being assigned in Exodus 23 as the same one they spoke to in the bush. And he doesn't play around. He doesn't play around at all. So this is where, Moses had to fall in line real quick. Incarnate, we're still reaching out to everyone. Just email me. There's no time frames. I'm having to schedule this stuff individually with everybody, so we're still in the process of doing that. Email me and we can set up a time for you, okay? All right. Tap hats. Yes, lying is a sin, Leviticus 19:11. Ephesians chapter 4, I think it's like verse 26, I believe. Lying is a sin, okay? Yes, we see people lie in the scriptures to save people. Like we saw in one of these chapters we just read, they're in a well. The lady who owned the well covered it over and told the people, oh, they already went that way, right? We see that lying is a sin. Some people lie and are not held guilty for that sin because they're trying to save a life. So
that falls under Matthew 12:5, right?
Yeah. Well, Matthew 12:5, it's about doing good in the Sabbath. So
yes, but his ultimate point was that there are things that you can technically be committing a sin, but still be held blameless.
There's a matter of priority as far as what's going on here. So this, just like the Levites break the Sabbath requirements every day by ministering in the temple, but yet they're held blameless. So when you're saving a righteous person from the unrighteous tyranny of another person, and you possibly lied in that occasion, then the Father may not hold you harmless for that because you're trying to save the righteous, if that makes any sense. So I just want to make this a very, very clear statement to everyone listening. We will not ever condone lying. We will not teach lying. We will not say that it's acceptable. We will not claim, like other people on YouTube, that Jesus lied in John chapter 7. He did not. We're 100%, the law and the New Testament explicitly teach, do not lie. Simply put, okay? But there are occasions where God does not hold their sin against them for extemporaneous reasons when someone lied. Did we just not see David commit adultery and murder, and his sin was not held against him? The Father judges in some cases that he was supposed to be killed for both of those guys.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be stoned to death by the people for both of those sins.
Yeah, Sean's not saying there wasn't consequences for David's sin or that his sin was overlooked, but he didn't receive the actual punishment, that the law calls for.
Even the Creator of heaven and earth decided to be merciful in those moments for a variety of other reasons and did not do what the law explicitly states. So in extreme moments like the lady in Jericho who lied for the two spies, or this lady with the well in this chapter in 2 Samuel, there's moments, right, where people lie and God doesn't hold them harmless because you're trying to, work on behalf of the righteous, right? Like, what was the name? The lady's name, Jael, the lady who took the stake to Jael. And she was like, come in, I'll give you some milk and you can stay in my quarters. And technically she did give him some milk and she did give him a place to fall asleep, but then she murdered him. She killed him when he slept. So she's not held responsible for murdering that guy. And she is, and she deceived him by showing him kindness to put his guard down so that she could get an advantage to murder him. So that's, part of warfare, unfortunately, as well. But we just want to make it very clear, guys. There are some things that are stated in Scripture that are considered sin 100% of the time, but the Father may not hold it against you because of the circumstances in which it's done. I would just make sure everybody is reminded that we should abide by what the Scriptures say as far as do not sin, and make that your first priority, okay? And not try to take the outline extemporaneous circumstances and make them have any precedent in our lives. Okay. The reason I say that is because there are people that do that. There's channels that preach that, and they'll say, oh, lying's not a sin because look at this over here. And you're like, Leviticus 19:11 directly tells you lying is a sin. End of story. Lying is a sin. These extemporaneous circumstances does not reverse the commandment of the Lord.
It's interesting that people will look at examples like Abraham or Rahab and use that as an example to say that lying is not a sin, but they would never do that with David's adultery or Rahab being a prostitute, like the prostitution. They wouldn't justify adultery by saying, well, look, David committed adultery, so clearly it's okay. The lying falls under the same category. So just something to keep in mind.
Elo Talks is asking, it's very difficult to break through the traditions. Was Yeshua 100%? but a perfect human, whom for that reason was sent by Yah to be our high priest, whom we come to in repentance as he became. Is there more to this? Oh, he became sin, offering in the presence of Yahweh.
Was 100% perfect human, whom for that reason was sent by Yah to be our high priest, whom we come to in repentance, and he becomes sin offering.
He became sin offering in the presence of Yahweh. I think this is a PSA question, type question of like, I'm sorry, Elo Talks. I'm trying to make the best of this. I know you're working with limited characters, but I think you're asking if Jesus was a sacrifice, a sin offering for us. I'm not going to even try, brother. Just try to reword it. I apologize.
Normally, I understand people's questions that Sean has a hard time deciphering, but I'm not getting the vibe behind that one. The vibe's not coming to me like it normally does. Sorry.
All right. Incarnate Limited is asking, how is it a man can legally have more than one partner and still be called righteous? But if a woman has more than one man, it's immediately adulterous and possibly sin that warrants death. Because in the patriarchal society, the man is responsible to take care of the women, and the women are not responsible to take care of a man. So that's the foundational philosophy, if you will, the thought process that builds upon this idea is that men were given the responsibility to be the as Genesis 3 says, that he will rule over you. He'll be your husband. He will rule over you. That gives responsibility to the man to take care of the woman. And so in the Torah, if there is a woman that is in need of being taken care of, she can submit herself to another man, and the man can take on additional wives, which means he has to take care of her, which is why there's Torah commands for the man to then not neglect her for food, clothing, shelter, or conjugal rights. So he is required in all aspects to save her life, protect her life, and provide for care and happiness in her life in the same way, because she is without her own individual man, I should say. She's having to share it with someone else, if you will. Okay. So that is the general premise behind it. That's the legalities that's explained about it. Why is it not in reverse? Because women were not to be a head over men. So if you put it in the reverse, then a woman would have to be a head over two men. And then you've got issues there. There's also an issue with just the offspring, as far as the offspring being legitimate based on how the father describes lineage from the father. So you would have an issue with the offspring as well.
I know that modern science has revealed some things about how intercourse affects a female's body in particular for the rest of her life. Now, I'm not saying that there's sperm in your brain like a lot of these red pill guys say on their podcast, but there is scientific truth to that in terms of DNA and it staying in a woman's body. So I think this is one of those situations that also comes down to the biology that the Father created in us and actually protecting women from whatever the negative consequences are from that permanent aspect of intercourse with a man. Studies definitely show divorce rates are very much higher. Reportings of fulfillment and feeling happy in a marriage are much lower for women who were very promiscuous for a long time before getting married. So it does seem, promiscuity for women in particular does seem to affect us on a much deeper level than it does men. And I'm not saying that it's right for men to be promiscuous. Even God says in his word that they shouldn't be promiscuous, which is where the marriages come in, the plural marriages. But I would also say that this is an aspect of biology that the Father knows about and understands that we don't. And it is one of those things where you kind of have to sum it up with life ain't fair. Like a lot of women get really upset about that and feel like it's not fair, quote unquote, that men can have multiple wives, but women cannot have multiple husbands and they can't go be promiscuous. But to me, I'm like, life ain't fair. I mean, there's things about life that aren't fair, quote unquote. It's about what's just and what's healthy. And I think that the Father knows what's healthy for women and men in terms of intercourse. And this is one thing that's much more unhealthy for a woman physically and mentally and emotionally and probably spiritually than men, because our parts are different. Just leave it at that.
Which is why the man is placed over the woman, is provide for her, protect her, and care and love her, not the opposite. This is why this spirit of rebellion has always included the idea of the Jezebel, which is a feminist spirit from ancient times. It goes back to the ancient witchcraft of Mother Babylon, personified as Isis or Hathor, which is to turn God's order on its head and make the woman over the man. So there's a ton of reasons. There's a ton of reasons why we don't do that. What you think of Iran and Israel, it's nothing new. It's just more of the wars and rumors of wars. It's not a part of any end time significant prophecy. The Christ isn't coming back soon because of this conflict. I personally, what do I think? I don't think it's prophecy, if that's the specific question. I think it's just more the ever ongoing battles of conflict. I really think Iran and North Korea are some of the last holdouts for the worldwide banking system, and this is why they're on the list next to be toppled. But that's a whole nother conversation. We're doing Sabbath today,
on a very base level, there's a fulfillment of prophecy going on in Israel only in the sense that at some point Jerusalem is going to be surrounded by enemies. So in our opinion, Israel isn't like this fulfillment of the regathering, the restoration of the promised land. The Jews there seem to be serving a purpose within prophecy, but it's to bring conflict into that area. It's not that they're building the kingdom over there, or they're the first part of, the New Jerusalem, and then the rest will come down later, or anything like that. The actual creation of that nation state, we don't believe is a fulfillment of any kind of prophecy of the people returning to the promised land. But there's something going on with the conflict that they're creating over there, because there's going to be major warfare going on there when Yeshua returns, and all the enemies are going to surround that area. And, there is a part of prophecy with, the people within the tribe of Judah seeing, looking upon him who was pierced and all that. But it's not the Zionist perspective of prophecy that we hold with Israel. I mean, I think a lot of you guys are old enough to remember just, what was it, 6 years ago, however long it's been since Trump was last in office. In his first presidency, there was a whole thing about prophecy being fulfilled because he made some peace treaty, which clearly that did a whole lot of good. There's been a whole lot of peace over there since Trump brokered that first peace treaty. But that was a moment that was put into the media and the news that people started doing the same thing. We had everybody in our chat. Oh, what do you think about that? My dad called me because he knows Sean knows the Bible really well. What do you think about this peace agreement? Do we have 7 years left? Is the clock ticking? And everybody forgot about that fulfillment of prophecy, quote unquote. Moved on with all, every wind of doctrine has turned into every wind of media story now. And everyone's got the memory span of a goldfish on that one. And now we're on to the next fulfillment of prophecy within Israel. So, and there were all kinds of those that happened all through the last however many presidents we've had involved in Israel. So,
and AIPAC loves it because it says, oh, you need to bless Israel and send us donations.
Yes.
We're prophecy being refilled right now.
Yes.
They love it. They love it. And Christians are just sending them billions of dollars a year.
Billions of dollars. It's insane.
Red Cardinal, it'd have to be kind of specific. We've talked about it emphatically in a lot of channels, a lot of videos, but you'd have to kind of articulate like in what specific regard, like the day of your eternal life, church discipline, repentance, leading to your repentance. Like what are we talking about? Like you'd have to kind of specify. Heat Seeker, I bet that's a lot of fun. Bro.
I kind of gathered that from your name.
Yeah.
I was curious. I need to pop over his channel, see if there's any funny videos of him eating peppers. Nobody literally eats Jesus.
Hey, Heat Seeker, are you like that guy in, was it chapter 19 or 20 we just read, Barzillai? He's like, I can't taste anything anymore. I'm 80 years old. Is that how you do
That's
that?
probably how you're gonna be eventually.
How do you eat the
Wow.
hottest peppers in the world and not? I would die. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, Mr. Necromancy in here. Nobody eats Jesus. Nobody eats him literally when he.
Well, in the apostolic church, they claim they do.
I mean, know they do, but hey, our position is that was clearly figurative. Eating human flesh and drinking human blood is absolutely so much against Torah that was one of the main things that the Gentiles who weren't under the law were commanded to follow when they became members of the covenant, party to the covenant.
15.
They were one of the first things they're told is do not drink blood. So it can only be metaphorical unless you want to make Yeshua a cannibalistic lawbreaker, and he's not. And I understand that your guys' tradition and you guys decide that your church decided on these things and voted on these things many, many moons ago, but it doesn't mean that they were right. Everybody's susceptible to misunderstanding the scriptures, especially people who are far removed from the generation of Yeshua and the apostles.
The Orthodox proudly proclaim that they uphold mysticism, specifically in the veneration of Mary and as well as the Eucharist. So this is not biblical concepts, the mysticism, this idea of like, oh, there's this magical way that it turns and absolves you of your sin because it turns into the blood of Christ and the body of Christ. Like that is not stated in Scripture.
Grave sin to drink blood.
That is literally the stereotype of men from the Middle Ages applying mysticism to their interpretation of the Bible, which is against the clear direction and the words of the Bible, right? Which is this like we don't believe in cooties, right? We understand where sickness comes from. So like in the same way, they didn't understand atonement. So they started making up a definition of it from mysticism, as opposed to what the Bible describes as atonement, which is a priest ministering in a temple. We don't need men in robes in the 4th century to reinterpret what atonement is or what the Passover is, which is 1 Corinthians 11 and 5 verse 7, which is what Paul's instructing. He's not instructing to eat the Eucharist. He's instructing the Eucharist is a word for Thanksgiving, even used by Irenaeus. It's not talking about this mystical process that is not defined in Scripture. So we would vehemently disagree with the Orthodox interpretation and take. Sin atonement and guilt offerings are accomplished by the Father through a priest in his temple, which the Bible directly tells us Christ is performing for us on our behalf right now. Hebrews 2:17, Hebrews 5:7 through 10, Hebrews 8:1 through 5, Hebrews 9:20 through 23. It's all in there, guys. Hebrews 10:1 through 4, Psalm 110, 1 through 4. He is our high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. He is forever going to minister in the Father's temple on our behalf. That's the process for atonement. And it's not coming forward and letting the man feed you some crackers and wine. Okay?
Which is why in all the prophecies of the kingdom being on earth, we see sacrifices as part of our life in the kingdom. Like it's a perpetual statute that we'll be doing these sacrifices. So your church took the literal and made it figurative. So they took Jesus as a literal high priest and said, oh, that's just figurative. Yeah, I mean, he's got the job title, but he's not actually doing priestly duties up in heaven. He's not really doing those priestly duties. And then they took the figurative and made it literal. So they said, oh, eat his flesh and drink his blood? Has to be literal. That has to be, because if you don't literally eat his flesh and drink his blood, you can't be saved. So that must be literal. So to explain the wafers and the wine, we're going to get into mysticism and say, oh, it's literally transmuted into his literal blood and body when we eat of it. So
and therefore it sustains you with life and makes atonement for you. All that stuff is not described in Scripture.
No.
This is just taking, applications what Christ used a metaphor about his teachings, which is how you obey him, which leads to him giving you eternal life, Matthew 19:16. And that's what they took that and made that metaphoric application into this literal sacrament, which they then claims you must have through their administration in their church in order to have salvation. It's all a power grab. This is why within that same group of men, they donned priestly robes, which were not anointed to them.
Yeah.
The presbyters started calling themselves priests. The Bible says only the Levites are priests upon the earth. But your crew, not you specifically, but the Orthodox Church back in the 4th, 5th century just decided upon themselves, we're priests now, in all disregard of Scripture, because we decided we're priests now, and I'm surprised Christ himself didn't strike you down. To be honest,
That's how merciful he is.
That's extreme mercy is
That's
ever
how
present
merciful he is.
in the fact that you guys claimed leadership for yourself falsely, and Christ, who is the leader truly over a priesthood in heaven, the greatest priest, is allowing you guys to play and LARP as priests when you're not priests at all. This is an absolute power grab during those days. In order for them to try to say, we rule over you, you must do what we say.
Yeah.
That's all there is, because the Levites had already been dispersed. It was prophesied they would be dispersed. And it was prophesied that they'll be regathered by Christ when he returns and made a priesthood again.
Yeah, it was even prophesied that they'd be without a priest for a very long time. And that's the time that we're in right now. So
yeah, there's a lot of problems. We
disagree.
This is why we don't subscribe to Orthodox.
Sorry.
Jack He, appreciate you for the question. What's the difference between the YouTube, Patreon, and Contextual Study Guide? So there's 3 options down below, guys. The YouTube membership is, if you want to support the channel and have access to the extra content, you can do that directly through YouTube by clicking join. If you don't want to do that through YouTube because they take a little bit more percentage and Patreon doesn't, you can go to Patreon, which is the link for the Contextual Study Guide. And that is our Kingdom of Context Patreon, where you can support us over there. And it's like a monthly subscription, basically, to access all the extra content that you can get on YouTube, as well as you can download the Contextual Study Guide. Now, you can do that as well at the family tier on YouTube. Just email me, as the instructions say. Let me know that you signed up for the family tier so I can verify it. And then you will be able to download. I'll be able to send you the Contextual Study Guide there as well. So there's 2 main benefits that people can get right now when they support us, either through YouTube membership or through Patreon, is that you can download our Contextual Study Guide books that we've completed so far, as well as have access to extra content to listen and watch. The third option is for our Days of Noah animated series that we're working on currently. And if you want to be a supporter of that, that has its own Patreon that you can go support that. If you want to see good Christian animated content, that's what we're hoping people will support us and help us complete that. That's our goal. So thank you for the question, though.
Yes, Sean has read Clement. He doesn't agree with him, Necro. We don't have to agree with early church fathers just because they were church fathers. I'm going to let them know.
We're not going to let this take up the Q&A, though.
Well, it's not. But we also probably really need to go soon, because we should probably wake them up. It's been a long time.
What time is it? Oh, wait. Oh, wow. We're way over, sweetie. He's been sleeping so good.
Yeah, that's what I'm
amazing.
saying. We should probably get going.
We're done with questions, guys. Sorry.
We're pushing it with nap time. So please check the links in the descriptions. We have 2 families that are in need. If you're looking to give alms to people in the faith, we have a brother whose father passed away and they need help with money for the burial. And we have a sister who lives in Mexico with her husband and children, and they are in a very dangerous situation and need funds to move houses. So we have vetted both situations. Check them out in the description below if you're looking to give alms. So
bless you guys. Practice the Sabbath is one of the easiest commandments that you can do. Bless you. We'll see you next time.